people truly in need. What they refuse to admit is that the freest society becomes the wealthiest society. It provides the largest middle class, and it produces the most fair way of distribution of income. But there's always a few. But if you reject the whole notion of the free market to say that you have to adjust to saying, well, we have to take care of a few here, it's better the government does it than expect voluntary groups of family and these other events. But the whole thing is it never works. What they do is they create more poverty. They create more equality, but it's the equality of poverty is what we end up with. I think the best example of this was the incentive to take care of people through the entitlement system was designed to help poor people make sure they can get a house and that they didn't have to have a down payment. And a lot of people did get a house that they couldn't afford. And they thought it was wonderful. The prices of the house was going up, so they would borrow. And they went deeper and deeper in debt. And of course, that meant that it was a very strong evidence. All the Austrian economists knew there was a bubble and that it would burst, and it did. Did it help the poor people, that it was designed to help? No. They lost their jobs and they lost their houses. And guess who got the benefits? The people who were making a lot of money on the run-up in the financial community, the people who were in the derivatives markets, the banks and the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they were making millions, if not billions of dollars. And guess what? When they went bankrupt, they came crying to the Congress and crying to the Federal Reserve and say, oh, there'll be a depression unless you bail it out. And they say, we're too big. You can't allow us to fail. So they did. But the people were too small to be heard, but the big guys were too loud and too big to fail. They got the bailouts, and therefore the entitlement system doesn't work for the poor at all. The entitlement principle actually protects the very wealthy, and you transfer the wealth from the middle class to the very wealthy. And that is what we have to end, and we have to reverse that. But in order to cut, we have to understand that the entitlement system fails. It's not endorsed in the Constitution. It's a failed economic policy. It's a failed social policy. And we ought to clearly understand how the market works. If you want to take care of the maximum number of people with the maximum number of wealth, you have to believe in liberty. And I think that's what happened to us in this country. We lost confidence that freedom does solve our problems better than anything else. Not that it would be perfect, but its imperfection is no justification for welfareism and socialism and all these government programs and all these debt and all the bankruptcy that we have to go through. So once we look at that and change it, we also have to look at something else, which is a major detriment to our economy and actually to world peace and actually for our national defense. And that has to do with our foreign policy. Our foreign policy is deeply flawed. We're spending well over $1 trillion a year overseas, and it's time we started spending that money here at home and not overseas. If we had followed the Constitution on how we should go to war, believe me, we would not have had a war since World War II. Now, just in the past 10 years, the wars over in the Middle East has caused our national debt to go up $4 trillion more than it would have. Just think if those $4 trillion hadn't been spent on the wars in the last 10 years, that money would have been spent here at home, and we would have been so much better off, and 8,500 Americans wouldn't have died, 44,000 with severe injuries and amputations and blindness and all the problems. They wouldn't be here at home suffering. They wouldn't have hundreds of thousands now of veterans looking for help at Veterans Administration because of post-traumatic stress syndrome. So it would have been a blessing. It would have been a saving, and we would have been safer for it. We wouldn't have been more vulnerable. One thing that we have done well in this country is provide for an ability to defend ourselves. We have more weaponry than all the other countries put together, including China. Nobody's on the verge of attacking us, so we don't have to bow and kowtow to the military-industrial complex. We can defend this country under all circumstances. And if we have to go to war, we do it properly. We do it with the permission of the people, voting through their Congress, make the declaration of war, and we don't allow presidents to go to war on their own. That is not right. And that is the reason I can promise you sincerely as president, I would never go to war without a declaration, and we would fight it and win it and come home if we had to. But we do need to change our policies, whether it's foreign policy or on economic policy, on the monetary system. We have to address the subject of the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve provides the opportunity for governments to grow, whether it's the entitlement system or the military-industrial complex. Because if we would have had a system like Jefferson wanted, he wanted to say, pay our bills as we go along. If you want to spend the money, you tax people. People know exactly how much government's costing. But no, they put in the Constitution the government could borrow. That was just the beginning, and we were able to borrow, and we borrowed too much, but that wasn't enough for those who wanted the entitlement system and also the warfare system. So that is why they invented the Federal Reserve System, because you can hide the cost. You can borrow money to a certain point, but then it pushes interest rates up. If you didn't have the Federal Reserve, interest rates would restrain the government spending. But because you have a strong dollar, and the dollar was a reserve currency, it used to be a gold standard a dollar, and the people in the world still trust it to a degree. Because of that, we've had this license to go and spend this money at the expense of the American people. Because now we own a huge debt, and as the government gets bigger, the liberties of the people get smaller. And that is the main reason why we have to reverse this trend, because it is liberty that solves our problems. It's not big government that does. What I think happened a good many years ago, we were blessed with a very, very wealthy country, a very free country. And we do know the freer we are, the wealthier we are. And what we did was we concentrated on the wealth. We concentrated on materialism. And we ended up with a government that's got into business of redistributing wealth. And therefore, it lent itself to the lobbyists getting control. And today, what we have to do is reverse that and say we have to understand liberty. It's very clear in the Declaration of Independence. The founders understood where liberty came from. It doesn't come from the government. Our liberties come from our Creator, and that is the reason why we should be free people. If our lives and our liberty come from our Creator, obviously all the fruits of our labor ought to belong to us and not to the government. Liberty inspires us to seek virtue and excellence. The government, when it takes over this project of trying to make us better people morally in the personal sense, or tries to improve the world by using force and bombs, invasion and occupations, believe me, much more harm is done than good. And obvious evidence for this was the waste that went into Vietnam in the years, of course, when I was in the military in the 60s. The French and Americans spent 20 years and billions of dollars and many, many lives lost. And then we finally left, we leave, and guess what? Instead of communism taking over the Far East, matter of fact, Western ideas took over. Vietnam now is more westernized. We trade with them, we talk to them, we travel back and forth, we invest in that country. So just think of what was achieved in peace that could not be achieved in 20 years of war. We must once again champion the cause of liberty, because it is the freedom for the individual to be able to assume responsibility for oneself that makes the difference. And instead of it allowing more poverty, it allows less poverty. And we have lost the moral high ground, because we come across, when we say we believe in free markets and sound money, they say that is old-fashioned and you don't care about people. If you care about people, you defend the cause of freedom, because that's how you take care of people, through a free society. This wonderful test that we've had and the wonderful success is going by the wayside unless we make a change. And the American people are now looking for the change. They know there's a financial crisis. It's not just the average turn down. And they're sick and tired of the wars, and they're sick and tired of the expense, and they're sick and tired of the debt, and they know something is seriously wrong. But we don't have to invent anything new. All we have to do is look at our traditions, and our traditions have been great. We had a free society. We had a good Constitution. All we need, send only people to Washington who actually read the Constitution, believe in the Constitution, and will follow the Constitution. I am convinced that with following these understanding about our Constitution, our traditions, and the concept of liberty, is that is the only way that you have a chance of achieving peace in the world. If you assume that you can use force on individuals on how they want to live or other countries on how they should live, it doesn't work. If we want to be the exceptional nation, we are not exceptional by using force to tell other people what to do. If we want to be the exceptional nation, we should. We should be a free nation with sound money, property rights, individual rights, and offering peace and trade with people. Then other countries would want to emulate us, and that is the way you spread the message of liberty. And the wonderful thing about the concept of liberty is it's not divisive. Our country, many times over the years, have been divisive because we've had this belief that rights come by groups. We have a group that demands rights because they belong to the group. You should never get a penalty because you belong to a group, but you should never get a special privilege because you belong to a group either. But if we understand the principles of liberty, and everybody defends the liberty, not because we're all going to use the liberty the same way, we'll have different religions, different habits, different personal lifestyle, different ways we'll spend our money. Some will do a better job than others. But if we want to mold other people by force, it doesn't work. But if there is an understanding that we want to defend the cause of liberty because we all want liberty to use it in our way, then we should all come together. We should all come together. And this is the reason I'm very proud of our campaign. We have people coming together, and Republicans because of their conservative values and conservative credentials, but we have a lot of independents joining our campaign. We have a lot of Democrats are joining our campaign. And guess what? When you do statistical analysis of and polling with my name against the president, guess what? We do better than all the other Republican candidates. But the real test is going to come. I think Super Tuesday's pretty close, isn't it? Today is Tuesday, isn't it? All right, we're going to find out something very special today, but this won't be the end all. This is a long-term operation. Not only should we do well tonight, we're going to continue to accumulate the delegates, which we have. In some of the states that they said we have lost the straw vote, guess what? We're winning the delegate votes. So the message has to be loud and clear, and I am convinced that the country is ready for it. There's a definite difference compared to 4 years ago. People recognize the economic crisis. They're sick and tired of the wars and the waste and all the debt. So I am optimistic. I am especially optimistic because our crowds so often are filled with young people, and college campuses are alive and well with the spirit of liberty. And that, along with those of many who have thought about this and sort of dropped out and kept hoping and wishing there would be a change. But the status quo always stays the status quo. We change parties and we end up with the same policy, same foreign policy, same Federal Reserve, same entitlement system. But right now, I believe an idea whose time has come, and armies cannot stop those ideas. So let's march forward by picking up the pieces and advancing with the cause of liberty and restore the greatness of America. Thank you very much.